It's my pleasure now to introduce our speaker for this morning, my dear friend Don MacEachern. Don was born and raised in Berkeley, California, and in 1967 he graduated from the University of Berkeley, and he married his wife, Perrin, and they remained married for the next 58 years. And they were drawn to Virginia Beach in 1968. The whole family just moved out here to Virginia Beach because of Edgar Casey. And everything just fell into place, you know. And they established roots quickly. Don got himself a job with a office equipment business for the next, which he stayed with for the next 40 years, retiring in 2009. Along the way, he and Perrin had 6 children. Then he began his second career. His second career was that of just helping people in need. And it's not many people I've known who have just completely given their life to serve others. And he particularly was drawn to people who were on the periphery of society, the homeless, prisoners, inmates in jails. And he started working with a group they called Outreach for Christ, which worked with the homeless along the ocean front, helping them find housing and so forth. And I knew Don through Robert Krajenke. That's how I first met Don. I found out that Robert was living with this gentleman and his family. He has his own little efficiency apartment. And Robert had been, was asked to be the godfather of several of their children. And when that happens in the MacEachern family, you become adopted by the MacEachern family. And that became really important as Robert grew older. We all know Robert. We love him. He passed over last year. But he had a long, protracted, about 7 or 8 years decline. And he really needed help. And Don was there for him. And when he'd be in the nursing home, he'd be for rehab or whatever. Don and his family were the only ones there that were just with him all the time, helping him. And he was really a member of the family. And so that's how I got to know Don. And he's just a person that gives his life trying to help people. And that's what I love. And today he's going to tell you about a ministry called Kairos. And I'll let Don take it from there.
All right. Thank you. It's so good to be back here on Sunday Morning Live with Bruce and friends. Last time I was here was November 2019. Yeah, the time in between has been a difficult time for many of us. Yeah, I lost a wife and a good friend. As far as Robert goes, he was part of my family for 30 of the last 50 years of his life. We came here in 1968 and 69. He was living with us. Robert was working in the ARA, wasn't making much money, so he always needed a place to live. So he came with us, and that lasted until mid-'80s when he went to Detroit to take care of his father who was dying. And when he got there, he kind of settled in. He got married to his wife, Lynn, or Christine Lynn, and that lasted until about 2000, 2001. And then he came down here, and from 2004, he was living with me again. So again, he's the reason why I know most of you folks. And all that happened mostly through dinners. I would be Robert's chauffeur. In the beginning, Bruce would pick him up and take him to the dinners, and that was at Dick's house, or Dick Dingus was one of the places where Robert would go, and of course to Bruce's house. So I probably know about half the people in here from that, just having been around. So anyway, it's a real blessing to be here. Before we start, I've got some handouts. Bob, could you take some and right there on the table? And I bet they're setting my timer because Bruce is going to. He says I've got 30 minutes to do this. So I'm kind of like, have you ever seen Smokey and the Bandit? You know that scene where the truck driver is racing from Texarkana back to Atlanta, and he's singing the song, Eastbound and Down. Well, the phrase that's getting me eastbound and down, loaded up in truck, and we're going to do what no one else has done. I got a long way to go and a short time to get there. Look at old Bandit Run. So my issue is getting that long time into that short time clock. So what I want to do is you get this out, there's a prayer at the top. Don't look at this backside yet, because that'll just keep your mind entailed in that. And I will, given enough time, go down here. I'm going to talk about what Kairos does after some other preambles. This will tell you how we do it. Okay? So, everybody have a sheet? So the Kairos community prayer is said before every talk that's given on the weekend. So let's say that together, all right? Jesus, come join us in our journey as we seek your will for this community in this environment. Teach us to love each other as you love us, to give ourselves as you gave yourself, that the kingdom of God might be made present to all. Okay. Now, a little Bible quiz. The parable of the sheep and the goats, which is going to be the basis of what prison ministry is. Does anybody know what book of the Bible that's in? I guess not. It's in the book of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 34 and 35. But that particular verse has a lot to say to us. So I'm going to do a little exposition on that whole verse because it really tells us a lot about what we believe in the love consciousness creator that made us and the power and love of the messenger who brought us and the Holy Spirit who sustains us. All right, so the parable is, then the king says to his right hand, "Come, O blessed my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." And this is where it comes in. What did they do to deserve that? For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. The first five are pretty easy. They're really just simple acts of mercy. Anybody can do that with your neighbors and your friends. The last one is not so easy. So that's where Kairos comes in. And we're going to make you a part of that team which gets to do visitations without actually going into the prison. But I'll do that at the end. Now, the arresting thing about that whole parable is that Jesus is clearly saying that the ultimate mark of an authentic Christian is not his creed or his faith or his Bible knowledge, but the concern which he shows to those who are in need. The practical demonstration of love is the final proof. And also note that Jesus does not take, listen to this, Jesus does not ask anyone to present his case or argue his cause. He asks no questions nor requests any evidence. He simply extends to this one group the invitation, "Come, O blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom." Then he explains the basis of his choice. He has simply noted that when they had opportunity to help someone in need, they did it. Nothing more is required. It is sobering to realize that Jesus identifies himself with those in need. If you help them, he says, you are really helping me. And if you ignore them, you are ignoring me. So he cloaks the relationship around them and calls them my brethren. This is a message which people and folks need to hear because they are wrought with angst, anger, unforgiveness, and no hope. They need to understand the God that can do this. They need to understand the consciousness of love that created us, the willingness and the power of the man who brought the message, and the ongoing support of the Spirit which sustains us. In the prison, or up in Virginia, in Department of Corrections, there are probably 35 to 40 different religious groups which they recognize. And when you're in a prison, if there's a religious group, each one is allowed a certain amount of time for worship time. And if someone, and it's not unusual when we're in the Kairos weekend, someone, well, aren't all these religions the same? Well, my simple answer is, if you have 35 religions in this prison, 34 says do, 1 says done. You understand that answer? That's what we're talking about. And that's something they don't understand. So we're telling that the love of God is transactional. And the love of God is transactional. Or the 99 say that the love of God is transactional, and there are things that you have to do. But the 1 says the love of God is unconditional. So, why should you care? Some of you within the sound of my voice, either here or maybe watching online, may be thinking to yourself, why should I care about people in prison? They get what they deserve. It's not my problem. On the other hand, some of you may have good friends, family members, or even a child in your own who is doing time. You have a different outlook. What I want to do right now is put you into a situation so that you can mentally encompass what I'm about to go through. And I need you to do this with your eyes closed, because you're going to put your imagination to work. I want you to picture in your mind in a courtroom. You're the only one there except for the judge, the bailiff, a man with a gun, and a court reporter. And you're there for your sentencing hearing. And you've done some rather bad things. And you're standing in front of that bench, what they call, and that bench is lifted high for a reason. And you have on that bench the judge who is going to give you your sentence. He's wearing the black robes of authority. On his left hand, he's got the books of the law, and on his right hand, he's got the computer, which tells him everything you did, currently and in the past. And he's about to sentence you. And he does. And it comes down, and it's not as good as you thought it would be. It crushes you. And life as you know it just ended. You were expecting judgment. What you were hoping for was mercy. But then, the judge comes from off his bench, comes down beside you, takes off his robes, puts his arms around you, and he says to you, I'm going to take your punishment. Again, you expected judgment, hope for mercy, but what you just got was grace, something you never deserved. And he says to you, I see you, I know your heart, your pain, and your regret. Nothing you have done can separate you from my love. No walls, no bars, no mistakes. Nothing is greater than my mercy. I came to set the captives free, and that freedom begins in your heart, no matter where you are. That's the kind of message that Kairos tries to deliver into the prison, because these guys are wrought with issues. So I want to go through, now on the handout, you'll see a little outline after the community prayer of the points I want to go through. First, there's spirit, and at the end, I've got a video and a couple of pictures to kind of give you a visualization of what goes on inside the meeting area. Most of the time, it's always a gymnasium, okay? So how does Kairos ministry affect the lives of inmates? Kairos ministry has a significant and often transformative effect on the lives of prison inmates. And here's how we impact them. First of all, there's spiritual transformation. Kairos introduces inmates to Christian teachings through retreats, small group discussions, helping many develop to renew their faith. That spiritual grounding often leads to a change in mindset, fostering hope, forgiveness, and purpose. But let me make it clear. Whoever comes into the program, and there's a limit, the Kairos team can handle 42 inmate candidates. They put in an application that they want to come to Kairos. Some are not selected. But the ones who are, they may not necessarily be Christian. They could be Buddhist, they could be Muslim, they could be Shinto. That's not our point. We want to bring everybody in and introduce them to the love of God that is expressed in that parable of the sheep and the goats. That's the kind of God that they need to hear. And it's not something they really understand. And it takes a lot of work through that weekend to introduce a concept like that to somebody who's never thought about it or believed it. All they've known is bad times, okay? And we do, well, I'll get into the seating situation in a minute because that helps. We're also trying to create a supportive community inside the prison. Inmates who feel isolated or rejected by society find connection and acceptance among fellow participants and volunteers, reducing feelings of loneliness and despair. Being a solo inmate in a prison is dangerous. Somebody's going to get you, for good or for bad. There are a lot of communities and a lot of gangs in prison. There's a lot of religions that get put together because they're gang members who want a time to meet outside of their cells. It is what it is. As long as they can declare themselves and make a explanation of why they're getting together to the warden, they can meet. So we're trying to work up a gang for Jesus. We're giving this team who is in front of us the ability to be added to the graduates who have gone before them. And we give them every opportunity after they reach this weekend to get together and be supportive. Positive behavior changes. Many inmates go through the Kairos program report improved behavior. The emphasis on love, accountability, and forgiveness encourage participants to act more responsibly and respectfully within the prison environment. Now, a lot of that has to do with just playing the game and being smart and not going against the rules of the prison. Because when you do, you get written up. And the number of write-ups you get can sometimes affect when you're up for possibly for parole. They look at your record. Oh, you had a lot of citations. You weren't doing too well. So that may be one reason. But we hope that they see that the violence that they've been in or the situations that they have been in have changed because they have a new outlook on their life and what they need to do. We want to make some of these men in there leaders in bringing other people to Christ and bringing them to the program. We're changing lives, and we do it through the gospel and through hands-on 4-day weekend. And that's what Kairos is, 4-day weekend. So the positive changes are good for the guy who's going to be a loner, so he doesn't get caught up in all the claptrap that goes on in the prison. There is also emotional healing. This is a biggie. Scars, hate, unforgiveness, all the things that weigh upon these men who have had, men and women, okay, who have had a life that brought them into a place that they don't want to be. And the stories are all different. To tell you the truth, I've sat at table 2 different times with guys who shot both their parents. They've got an issue to overcome. So it's difficult. So they have to reach out and understand there's a loving God who will take them where they are and make things better. Otherwise, they're consigned to a life of drudgery, meanness, and all the negative aspects you can think of. Emotional healing gives inmates a space to reflect on their past, confront pain, and begin emotional healing. Hearing personal stories and testimonies often leads to breakthroughs in processing guilt, trauma, and broken relationships. There are several ceremonies within this weekend that give the prisoners a cathartic means to unload, especially if there are issues of unforgiveness, which is a poison self-administered, if you understand what it is. And it's on Saturday afternoon. Prior to that, in a chapel meeting in the morning, each man is given a piece of onion skin paper. And they are to write on that the names of the people that they hold in unforgiveness. In the afternoon, and we all sit by tables, okay? So each table comes up, and that man puts that onion skin paper in that water and stirs it, and it dissolves and it goes away. He is then prayed over, and his hands are washed. We are trying in that ceremony to lift the burden, if he's ready to do it, of unforgiveness in his heart, in a very visual ceremony. There's a lot of tears after that, let me tell you. So, emotional healing through a declaration of love and you're okay and God will receive you is a big deal. Okay? Now, the last thing on that list, now I'm going to get to recidivism later because that can get to be pretty long. Oops. Okay, I'm doing okay. Number 6 on that list is long-term support. Now, it says that the ministry does not end with a single retreat. Kairos offers small group meetings and reunions that provide continuity, spiritual growth, and sustained support networks. We are an ongoing prison ministry, healing and transformation to inmates by nurturing their spiritual lives, encouraging positive behavior, and helping them build meaningful relationships. After the weekend, which again is 4 days, there is visitation in one form or another by team members every month. Monthly, there is what we call a reunion, where any Kairos graduate comes together with the new graduates, and we do a 2-hour preaching, teaching, singing event. Again, they get to see people they haven't seen. Oh, I didn't know you were in Kairos. Oh, you too? In other words, they get introduced to the rest of the people that they won't see because of what dormitory they live in. And Within that month, there are 2 morning sessions, 2 weeks apart, which we call prayer and share. That is where, for about 45 minutes, whoever shows up, they meet and go through a list of questions about how you're doing this week with this issue, that issue, that issue. And it makes people learn how to be vulnerable, because they are telling other people what their issues are and can you pray for me? So it's all meant to be self-restorative. Again, it's every month there's something going on. Okay? Now, as far as recidivism goes, the recidivism rate of prison released prisoners in the United States is horrible. I've heard estimates of upwards of 50% of people who get out within 5 years, they're back. So what's going to change that? I will tell you specifically that the director of the Department of Corrections for Virginia is desperate to get Kairos in every prison in the state. Now, we currently cover 18 prisons. That's 15 for men and 3 for women. And it takes about a team of at least 30 men and women to support a prison program. And in some areas of the state, there just isn't that, where the population gets thin, like up in the mountains. You don't have enough people to form a team to get this done, which is unfortunate. But the warden understands that the recidivism rate for Kairos graduates is under 20%. So it has a real effect on their lives. And a lot of that has to do with another portion of Kairos, which is called Kairos Outside. When a man has been through that program and has touched his life, and he calls home to his wife, he's not talking like he used to talk. What happened to you? What's going on? Well, I just went through this program. They told me all about God, who loves me, and I'm saved. And how do they translate that between the two? There is a program called Kairos Outside, which if that inmate would sign that person up, that person being his wife, his sister, whatever, any female in his life that is close to him, they will sign up, and twice a year they have a program where those ladies are at no cost to them are brought to a place in mid-state, and they go through a semi-course just like that man went through. So they understand what it was that touched his heart and changed his life. So that's part of the ongoing and outreach. That's the way the recidivism gets left so low. Virginia is chasing Florida because Florida has a recidivism rate through Kairos is about 17%. So it's really a drastic effect on these people's lives. So how can you help? How do you get combed into this number 5? When you were in prison, you visited me. Well, not a whole lot of people are going, I go. Just give me the key as long as I can get out. There are things that we can do. A great cloud of witnesses, which you can become. There's several ways to do it. You'll see in a video here that I'll show you. The gentleman talks about, I just came for the food. Well, what Kairos does in Virginia, we bake cookies. Lots of them, lots of them. The last weekend I went to in the end of April, we brought in 2,500 dozen cookies, left with none. So the cookies are supplied to the tables during the program time. So these men in the program during the daytime have coffee, iced tea, and cookies for snacks. On Saturday night, we go into the lockdown areas where these men live. And they're locked in their cells. And we give a bag of a dozen homemade cookies to every man in that prison. They know we're coming. And sometimes they start chanting, Kairos cookies, Kairos. We hand them through the, you're looking into a space which is not much bigger than a parking space. And you have two men, a bunk, a toilet, a sink, and maybe a TV. And we're handing them a dozen cookies each through their feed slot. They wait for us to come. So hopefully it may be an invite put in their minds that next time they'll sign up for the program and get to eat cookies for 4 days. I don't know. But you can support us by baking cookies. You can support us by writing a check in support of Kairos of Virginia, because there are a lot of expenses that go into this. Probably the average weekend, including lodging, is about $8,000. We give each man a cross. We give each man a Bible, which has been especially constructed for Kairos purposes, and it has all the scriptures in NIV, but there are 26 to 30 interspaced stories of prisoner success and devotional uplifting that you won't find in any other Bible. So that's unique, and every graduate gets one of those. And there's a lot of other things. You've got the papers, you got towels, drinks, cups, yada, yada, yada. It gets pretty expensive, but we look for outside support to help us with that, because nobody funds us except y'all. And the other thing is prayer. One of the things that we do to make the praying by outside people visible, prior to the prison weekend, we collect from people who said, yeah, I'll commit to praying for you during that time, a time that they would pray for us. And they might pray all 4 days. So where each time that's given to us, we put it on a piece of construction paper because of its substance. Then we link them all together, and we create a prayer chain. And in one of the talks called You Are Not Alone, that prayer chain starts coming out of a container, and it comes out, and it comes out, and it comes out. And sometimes it's 100 feet, sometimes it's 150 feet, sometimes it's 200. And we tell them each one of those links is for a person who is praying for you during this time. And we put that up on the wall. And you can bet those guys will go up and look at that. Now, they're first names only. We don't put last names. But they will look at that and say, oh, somebody's praying for me. Very impactful. So they know that they are surrounded, not by us just alone, but by the community. Again, that's the great cloud of witnesses. That's the way you get into the prison under our shadow, if you will. And we look at that support as being very important. I think that, okay, that's about all I wanted to say. How am I doing? And I've got a couple videos to show you. 29 minutes and 17 seconds. I need to quick, Lord, how do I get that first video up?